What's up, everybody? Welcome to week 13 and my picks for week 13. If you were following along last week, you saw I think I went 14-2 with my week 12 picks when I added them up. I think that's what I was at, which would be my best single week of the season. So I'm glad to see that we're kind of getting better at this as we go on, as we get a better idea of who's good and who's not good. You would hope by week 13 we understand that, but this season is so crazy that you don't really know who's going to win every single week because it seems like it is wide open this year, which I love. It's good to have it wide open. But let's move on to week 13, try to pick these games and hopefully kind of maintain that good ratio we've got going and climb back above 70%, which is where we want to be. Ideally, it's 75%, but really I'll take 70% at this point if we're being honest. But anyway, week 13 picks. First game already happened. I did not see this coming at all. I called Washington going down to Dallas and getting a road win, and they got stomped. It was a weird game, a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play from that Redskins offense. And credit to Dallas for forcing those turnovers and also making a big play on special teams and all that kind of stuff, especially because Dak has been struggling so mightily for the last 3 weeks. So the fact that he was able to get that much help from the rest of the team, that was huge. So I will credit Dallas for that. But, man, I saw that one going the other way by a long shot. So I'll chalk that one up to the NFC East. The NFC East is the most unpredictable division in football year after year. And we just got proven that correct once again on Thursday Night Football. As for the games that have not happened yet, we're going to start with Kansas City going to New York to take on the Jets. And my God, have the Chiefs fallen. I mean, you look at the first month, 2 months of the season, they looked completely untouchable. They looked like the best team in football. They had wins over the Patriots and the Eagles, who are the two best teams in football. I mean, it was going great. And then they've just fallen apart. They can't run block anymore, so Kareem Hunt can't get going. They've had injuries to the receiving corps. They have injuries to the offensive line. They've had injuries to the secondary. I mean, they just signed Darrelle Revis out of desperation. So, it's not looking good for them. I was kind of hoping that they would have one last gasp for air last week against Buffalo, and it didn't happen. So at this point, I do think that the Jets have a legitimate chance to beat Kansas City. In fact, I think more than legitimate. I think they are going to win this game. And it's, you look at the Jets, and I keep saying every week, man, they're scrappy, but they're going to lose. This week, I think they get the win. This week, I think they do scrap their way to a win, finally. They're not exactly a great team themselves, but they play their asses off. They've got a good coaching staff. They play sound, disciplined football. They get out-talented a lot from week to week, but Kansas City at this point, I don't know if they have the talent to out-talent the Jets. They just look completely discombobulated on both ends of the football. The defense is nothing like what it once was without Eric Berry. It's a total disaster over there in Kansas City right now. I almost can't believe what I'm seeing. I'm also just on the other end of the spectrum, kind of going on another tangent here, which I do often on these picks episodes. I'm really proud of the Jets for kind of hanging in there this long into the year. Nobody expected them to win more than 2 games at most. A lot of people thought they were going to be 0-16. And to see them still playing hard and still have the possibility of winning games this late in the season, maybe get to 5 or 6 wins by the end of the year, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. That is a hell of a job by Todd Bowles to get this team with this roster to 5 or 6 wins potentially. That was probably their best case scenario this year. Actually, it was probably better than their best case scenario. And, good on them. Good on them for sticking with it and playing their asses off and not giving up. And, I'm proud of them. I'm really, really proud of them. And I think Jets fans should be proud too. Now, as for the Jets' biggest rivals, the New England Patriots, they're going over to Buffalo to play a division game against the Bills. And, obviously I'm going to pick the Patriots in this game, just like I would pick the Patriots literally any other week. I mean, it's the Patriots in December. They don't lose this late in the year. Or if they do, it's extraordinarily rare, especially against the Bills. I know they kind of figured their stuff out last week against Kansas City and kind of reclaimed their identity. And I'll kind of flash back to that picks episode. I thought the Bills completely threw away their identity with the whole benching Tyrod saga. I thought they had a good thing going and gave it up. And last week against Kansas City, they got it back. So, good job by them to kind of realize their mistake and go back to what was working for them. but I don't think it's going to work against the Patriots. I think they're going to get a whole bunch of rushing yards. LaShawn McCoy's going to have a great game. I think Tyrod Taylor's going to make a whole bunch of fantastic plays. But when I look at this Patriots offense against the Bills defense, I think they could very easily put up 35 to 40 points. Even with some of the injuries that New England has sustained on offense, they still have so many weapons. They still have so many ways they can beat you. Tom Brady is still the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, bar none. Not even a debate to me anymore. And just, late season Tom Brady, late season Patriots with all these weapons, I don't think there's any way they lose this game, even though it's on the road, even though the Bills are kind of starting to kind of get their groove back. I'm going with New England all the way on this one. And I'm probably going to roll with New England every week for the rest of the season until the playoffs when they face their biggest tests of the year. Now, moving on to yet another AFC East team, we got the Dolphins hosting the Broncos. And I was tempted to take Denver here. They do have some key injuries that worry me a little bit. You got Derek Wolfe and Domata Peko, so their two best interior defensive linemen are hurt. Trevor Siemian is coming back in at quarterback, and I personally think he was the best quarterback on the roster the entire time, and I don't really see the reason for them to do all that experimentation with Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. I mean, they're not going to have great quarterback play no matter who's in the game, but I think Trevor Siemian is the least bad option. So I do think their offense is going to play better under Siemian. Still not going to play great, but I do think it will play better. But at the end of the day, ultimately, I do think the Dolphins are going to win this game. I don't think the Dolphins are that good of a team either, but the Broncos are kind of a dumpster fire, I mean, realistically speaking. So I'll take the below average team over the terrible team 10 times out of 10. It doesn't mean that Miami's great. It just means that Denver is that bad this year, And going into the year, I thought they were going to be great, but man, the quarterback play has just not been there. It's really not. So they're probably going to draft one high again and see where it goes in 2018. And speaking of new quarterback directions in 2018, our next game, we got the Niners going to Chicago to take on the Bears. This is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo's first start as a 49er, so I'm going to be watching this game live and checking him out. Maybe I'll do a film room episode on it next week. I'm not sure. Kind of depends on how this game plays out. But I'm very intrigued to see what Garoppolo does in his first real test as a Niners starting quarterback. I do think the Bears, though, play much better at home than they do on the road. It's an entirely different team when they're in Soldier Field. So I do think the Bears are going to win this game. It's probably going to be extremely, extremely ugly. Something like a 10-7, 10-6 kind of game. Jordan Howard's going to run the ball a million times. They're going to try to play defense and just kind of gut out a win that way. That's been their MO this year, is just feed the ball to the running backs, play defense, and try to outlast teams. And against the Niners, I don't think they have enough weapons around Garoppolo to move the ball through the air and kind of pick up the pace of the game and force Chicago to do anything but run the ball. So, that's what I think is going to be the script for this game. I think Garoppolo is going to put together a couple really nice drives. I think he's going to make some good throws. But ultimately, it's also going to be extremely apparent that he has zero talent around him on offense. And going into the 2018 offseason, the Niners front office first, second, and third priority will be get receivers, get tight ends, get running backs, get offensive linemen, get anything they can to help Jimmy Garoppolo be the quarterback that they will likely be paying him to be. They traded for him. They got to pay him. So, they need to get talent. They need to get anything around him to make his job easier. And they got a lot of capital. They got money, and they got draft picks. So I think they can do it, and they will do it. But don't expect that offense to be playing light years ahead of what it was under C.J. Beathard, because they really they don't have the talent. I like Jimmy Garoppolo a hell of a lot better as a quarterback, but he doesn't have anything to work with. So give me the Bears to win this game, and also give me Jordan Howard in fantasy. I think he's going to get a ton of carries. I'll be watching this game as well, so kind of check in with me on Twitter. I'll have my early impressions of Garoppolo as I'm watching him make throws. And, I'm excited to see what he does. I don't think it's going to be a great game to watch as a neutral observer, but it has enough intriguing things in it for me to make an appointment to watch it. Moving on, we got Detroit going to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, who we just saw on Monday night defeat my Texans, as I predicted they would. And I'm going with Detroit in this game. I do think the Ravens defense is good, especially with Brandon Williams back in the lineup. He's arguably their best player on offense or defense. Actually, not even arguably. He is their best player on offense or defense. I'm willing to just say that outright. He's definitely their most valuable player, too. But anyway, I do like that Ravens defense, but their offense cannot move the ball and they cannot score unless the Ravens defense creates turnovers or flips field position. It's they're bad. They just can't move the ball. So when I look at Joe Flacco against Matt Stafford, even though the Lions have kind of faltered in the last 5 to 6 weeks, been a much more inconsistent team than they were early in the year, at the end of the day, at least the Lions can move the football. Their defense isn't that good, but they can at least move the football. They can at least put points on the board. So I think they're gonna rely on Golden Tate. They're gonna rely on Marvin Jones. They're gonna rely on Amir Abdullah, and they're gonna force the Ravens to play catch up, and they're gonna force them to throw the ball, which as of yet they have been completely incapable of doing for the last 12 weeks. That would be the game plan if I was the coach, at least. Make Joe Flacco throw the ball, put up an early score, especially if you win the coin toss, get the ball first, try to put some points on the board, force Joe Flacco to take a 7-step drop and air it out, because so far he hasn't been able to do that. That's the winning formula. Make Joe Flacco throw when you win the game. That's the game plan that I think the Lions are going to execute and execute well, so I'm going to give them the win. Now, next game, a really, really huge matchup in the NFC. We got Minnesota going to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. I just did a Julio Jones breakdown on this channel a couple days ago. If you guys haven't seen that, you can go check it out. But it talks a little bit about Xavier Rhodes and how he's such a huge test for Julio because it's kind of matching freak athlete with freak athlete. And I really can't wait to watch it. To me, it's top 3 corner against top 3 receiver, which is a very rare matchup in the NFL to get an elite corner against an elite receiver. And especially if that elite corner also is known to travel with number 1 receivers. Not every number 1 corner in the league travels, but Xavier Rhodes does. So we're going to see a lot of him against Julio. I really can't wait to watch that battle. I'm going to be glued to it the entire time. It's going to be awesome, especially as a neutral fan. I don't have any emotional investment in this game, so I just get to sit back and enjoy that. But as for the game itself, I do think the Vikings are going to win. Even if you think Julio is going to beat Rhodes individually, I think the Vikings defense as a whole is better than the Atlanta offense as a whole right now, and I think the Vikings offense as a whole is better than the Atlanta defense right now. So on both sides of the ball, I like the Vikings in this matchup. I think they go down to Georgia and get a huge win, which is probably going to impact seeding quite a bit in the NFC playoffs in a few weeks, especially when you look at tiebreakers for conference wins and all that kind of stuff. These big matchups within the NFC really matter, especially with how close that conference is and how many teams are on the bubble for the playoffs. So very big game. I think the Vikings win it and get one step closer to that playoff bye. Next game, we got Tampa Bay going to Green Bay, the Battle of the Bays, as they call it. This game looked great in the preseason. Jameis Winston going against Aaron Rodgers. I was really excited for it. And then both teams they got hurt and they fell apart, especially at the quarterback position. So this game does not have the luster that it once did. I do think the Packers are going to win it. Brett Hundley is kind of getting better week after week. He's still nowhere close to Aaron Rodgers, so I don't consider them a legitimate playoff threat at this point. But I do think Hundley is playing well enough that they might be able to survive and kind of fight for a 6th seed late in the season. And if they can survive until Aaron Rodgers comes back, who knows what can happen. They just need Hundley to kind of steer the ship, get them to that 9-7 range, see if they might be able to sneak into a 6th seed and take it from there. I'm not saying they will, but it's possible. They need a whole bunch of people to kind of cannibalize themselves within the NFC to make that happen. But considering how many good teams there are in the NFC, that's not completely out of the realm of possibility. It's a very tight conference as a whole, and Green Bay is still technically in the hunt. As for Hundley himself, he really impressed me last week against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a pretty good defense, and like I said, he's getting better every single week. The decision-making is getting better. Obviously, he's a great athlete with a great arm, but the touch and accuracy are also improving. His chemistry with his receivers is improving. I don't think that we're going to see those early terrible Brett Hundley games like we did when he was brand new, never had started before, kind of, fish out of water experience. I think he kind of got that out of his system. I think he can be at least an average starting quarterback for them right now, which is really all they need. And at the end of the day, they're playing against Tampa Bay. They're not playing against a really good team. If they can take Pittsburgh to the final seconds, they can beat Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh is one of the best teams in the league. And even though they have a tendency to play down to their opponents, it wasn't really that Pittsburgh was making mistakes. Brett Hundley was just playing really well. So, like I said, if they can take Pittsburgh to the wire, they can beat Tampa Bay. And I think Brett Hundley, with his improvement, he is going to be able to do that. Now, moving on to the next two games. First up, we got Houston taking on Tennessee, the first of kind of a pair of AFC South battles going on this week. I think Tennessee is going to win this game. Marcus Mariota is not playing as well as he was early in the season. I don't really know what's up with him. Kind of ever since he hurt his hamstring, it's not been the same. I don't know if he's still hobbled by that. He shouldn't be. It wasn't that big of a tweak. But something's just off with him. I don't know. The decision making is worse. The ball placement is worse. He was known for being that accurate, safe quarterback that could make plays with his legs, and lately he's just been wild. So, they can still gut out wins with a good run game and a solid defense, and that's what happened last week. But if they want to make noise in the AFC playoffs, they need Marcus Mariota to play better. I don't know if he's going to be able to dig himself out of this rut, but they really need him to. As for Houston, they're dead in the water. I'm a Texans fan. I watch every single game they play. And Tom Savage is literally the second worst quarterback that I've seen in the Bill O'Brien era. And that's saying something because there's names like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brian Hoyer and, of course, Brock Osweiler, who is the worst quarterback, always will be the worst quarterback that I've ever seen in a Texans uniform. But Tom Savage is not that much better than Brock Osweiler, and that's a major issue. So the Texans are not getting any good quarterback play. Two of their three best pass rushers are hurt. Will Fuller is hurt. Deontay Foreman is hurt. He's gone for the year. He tore his Achilles. Their offensive line is banged up. I mean, it's a mess. The team is a mess. The season's a mess. And, it's really kind of depressing because when they were healthy, they could play with anybody. They took the Patriots to the wire and should have won that game. They took the Seahawks to the wire and should have won that game too. Really, the only team that beat them really badly when Deshaun Watson was playing was Kansas City, and they've imploded since that game. So, realistically speaking, if Deshaun Watson did not get hurt, if J.J. Watt did not get hurt, if Whitney Merciless and Deontay Foreman and Will Fuller, if everybody stayed healthy and they had their starters, or even at least most of their starters, they can afford one big injury. But the fact that everybody got hurt, if they were all healthy, this team would be a Super Bowl contender. Their offense was elite. Their defense, when everybody was healthy, was great. They beat this same Titans team by like 40 points. They were awesome. But then everybody got hurt. They got lost for the year. And now they're really only two star players that are left are Jadeveon Clowney and DeAndre Hopkins. So it's just a really unfortunate situation as a Texans fan to have to sit through it and have zero expectations and zero excitement for every single game, week in and week out. I know we're just going to lose every single game. But what makes it suck is that that if everybody was healthy, they would have a chance to win every single game. And that's the painful part. That's the really painful part. So I'm still excited for 2018, but I have zero excitement left in my body for 2017. I'm done with this year. I'm just so done. But anyway, after that rant, let's move on to the other AFC South game this week. Indy going to Jacksonville. Last time these teams met, it was in Indy, and Jacksonville beat the brakes off of them by, I think, like 30 points or something like that. It was brutal. I think the same is going to happen this week. I think the Jags win big. They've still got the elite defense. They've still got the punishing running game, even though last week's loss to the Cardinals was kind of gut-wrenching and entirely preventable, too. It was an entirely preventable loss. But I still see the talent on this team. I still think they're a very good football team. And at the end of the day, the Colts are not. They're playing in Jacksonville against a far superior team, talent-wise, coaching-wise. Every single way you can compare these two teams, Jacksonville is better. So, mark me down for the Jags. I think they're one win against the Titans late in the season away from cruising to this AFC South title and their first playoff berth in 10 years. Believe it or not. Good for them. Next up, we got Cleveland going to LA to take on the Chargers. And honestly, I'm going to skip over this game because I don't really see the point. The Chargers are a good team. They're probably the best team in the AFC West right now, to be honest. Even after their 0-4 start, they've clawed their way back. They're playing really well right now, and the Browns are the Browns. They're terrible. They're winless. They might legitimately go 0-16. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 0-16, and they suck. Just being blunt about it, they suck. So Chargers win. Let's move on. Rams making a road trip to Arizona, taking on the Cardinals. I think the Rams win this game. The Cardinals had a really gutsy performance last week in that kind of last-minute win against the Jaguars, who are also a really good team. But yeah, I think the Rams are going to win this game. I think they had a great bounce-back win against the Saints last week after getting pounded by the Vikings the week before. They still have a very, very good offense, tons of weapons. Jared Goff is dealing. The defense is kind of hit or miss. They're a little bit spotty, but I do think they still have a bunch of good pass rushers. The secondary is adequate. The linebacking core could use some work, but they're not terrible. So, if you combine an average defense with a very good offense, they can make waves in the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to win the whole thing, but they can definitely make waves in the playoffs. And the first step to kind of, legitimizing yourself as a playoff contender, at least in my eyes, is routinely beating the teams that you should beat. They should beat the Cardinals. When you look at what Arizona is bringing to the table offensively and defensively, the Rams should win this game. I think they will win this game, but it's an important game for them to win, not just because of the division rivalry, but winning games that you should win legitimizes you as a contending team. It shows that you're not kind of a fluky, inconsistent, never know what you're going to show up as kind of team that they were under Jeff Fisher. The reason why they went 7-9 so much is because week to week they couldn't figure out whether or not they wanted to be good. They would beat really good teams and lose to really bad teams. They didn't beat the teams that they should have beat. This year under Sean McVay, they are beating the teams that they should beat, which is why they're being taken seriously. So I think that trend is going to continue. I think they will beat the Cardinals. I think they're going to put up 30-plus points yet again and continue to show that they are for real and should be taken very seriously as a contender in the NFC. Now, next up, we have the dumpster fire in New York going to Oakland to take on the Raiders. I don't know how much the Giants are going to lose by, but I know they're going to lose, and I hope they lose by 30-40. Actually, I hope they lose by 50. I hope they get completely and utterly embarrassed because Eli Manning does not deserve what happened to him. You could say he wasn't having his best year, but he was not the problem this season. He was nowhere near the problem this season. And after everything he's given to that franchise, 2 Super Bowl rings, an incredible role model in the community, everybody looks up to him. All the veterans love him. All the rookies love him. He's a great mentor in that locker room. I cannot believe that they're treating him this way, that they're opting to basically end his career as a Giant this way, to end his Iron Man streak this way. It's incredibly disrespectful. It's ungrateful for everything that he's given to this franchise and this city. And I know they want to get a good look at Davis Webb. I understand that side of it. But they're not starting Davis Webb. They're starting Geno Smith. So if you're going to pull Eli Manning and you want to try to get a head start on looking at what potentially could be your quarterback of the future, why the hell are you playing Geno Smith? Why? What is the point of this? If you're going to pull Eli Manning for Davis Webb, pull him for Davis Webb. Don't pull him for Geno Smith. At least I can understand Davis Webb a little bit. I can sort of see the logic behind that. There is zero logic behind playing Geno Smith. That's just outright disrespectful. That's what pisses me off. I'm not even a Giants fan and this pisses me off. So I hope they lose by 30 or 40 or 50. I hope they get embarrassed. And if I was a player in that locker room, I wouldn't even want to play this game. I would not want to play for Ben McAdoo because what loyalty has he shown to that locker room? He's tried to be the tough disciplinarian that Tom Coughlin was, but all he's done is piss off his own players the entire year. It's an awful, awful situation that I cannot believe that a team that is this talented, that should have been a much better team this season, was completely derailed by its own head coach. It's unconscionable to me. And you can blame injuries and all that kind of stuff, but no, this team was going nowhere with Ben McAdoo as coach. Nowhere. And he's going to get fired. He's not going to be there next year. So why does he even care whether or not he looks at Davis Webb? He's not going to be the coach anyway. That's another thing. Why does he give a shit? He's not going to be there. Jerry Reese is not going to be there. They're not going to be drafting the next quarterback. They're not going to be playing the next quarterback. They shouldn't care about this. They should be playing Eli Manning and trying to get some wins and saving face and just, inevitably getting fired. They know they're getting fired. Why does he care? I can't even speak. It just makes no sense to me. This whole situation makes zero sense to me. So, yeah, not only do I think the Raiders are going to win, but I hope they win big because, God, that whole Giants front office, they deserve to get destroyed in this game. They really do. It sucks for the players. I feel for the players. But Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese deserve to be embarrassed this week. They really, really do. But anyway, kind of subduing the rage a little bit here. I love Eli Manning. I don't want to see him treated that way. But anyway, moving on. Carolina going to New Orleans, arguably the game of the week. Personally, I'm going with the Panthers. I think the Saints are really banged up right now. Marshawn Lattimore is not going to play. It looks like Teron Armstead's probably not going to play. They're signing tackles off the street. Ryan Ramczyk is also hurt. He might play, but he's banged up. They got injuries all over the place. Ken Crawley is coming back, which is good, but without Marshawn Lattimore, this defense just doesn't work. They rely on him so much. He's their most important player on defense, and that's saying something because I love Cameron Jordan, but really this defense does not work without Marshawn Lattimore in the lineup, and since he's not playing, I have my doubts about their ability to actually stop the Panthers. And on the other side, the Panthers are playing really well right now. It seems like their offense always performs better whenever Kelvin Benjamin is not there. I don't really know what the correlation for that is. Maybe I'll kind of dive into that over summer and see why they perform so much better without Kelvin Benjamin, whether he was hurt a couple years ago and they went to the Super Bowl, or after they traded him this year and all of a sudden they started scoring more points. I don't really know what's going on there. So I'm going to investigate that at some point. Obviously, I can't do that in 1 week because that requires watching like 3 years worth of tape. But it's a very interesting subject to me, and it's a phenomenon that nobody can really deny at this point. It's just a much better offense without him. So when I look at an improved Panthers offense going against a very banged up Saints defense, I got to go with Carolina here. And that brings me to another huge game in the NFC. We got Philadelphia going up to Seattle. They're playing in the Clink. Big primetime matchup here. I do think the Eagles are going to win because the Seahawks are banged up. If they were full strength, and since it is in Seattle, maybe they'd be able to pull it off. But Philadelphia is A, the best team in the league. B, they match up perfectly with Seattle in terms of having a strong defensive line that can take advantage of a weak Seattle offensive line. And on the other side, you got Carson Wentz. He's playing like the NFL MVP, and he's going against a very injured Seahawks defense that doesn't have Cam Chancellor, doesn't have Richard Sherman. They're banged up in several places on that defense. So overall, I think the Eagles will win this game. It'll probably be hard fought, maybe like a 7-point game at most, because it is in Seattle and crazy stuff happens in Seattle. But I do think the Eagles will get out of there with a win. And that gets me to the final game of the week, Pittsburgh going to Cincinnati for the Monday Nighter. Another huge divisional game, a game with a lot of animosity in it. These teams do not like each other, and it's usually a pretty well-fought contest, regardless of how good or bad either team is. It's very physical. It reminds me a lot of old-school Steelers-Ravens games, where they just beat the crap out of each other for 60 minutes, and whoever has the most bodies left at the end wins. Now, I do think the Steelers are going to win this game ultimately. They have so much firepower on offense when you look at Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Juju Smith-Schuster and Martavis Bryant. I mean, it's a lot to deal with. A lot to deal with. And even though the Bengals offense themselves are playing much better lately, especially with Joe Mixon, now that he's kind of asserted himself as the lead back in that offense, I don't think it's enough for them to be able to keep up with everything that the Steelers can bring to the table. It'll probably be a high-scoring game. I'm thinking something like a 35-27 kind of game. So at the very least, it'll be entertaining. It'll be a good Monday night game, a lot of touchdowns on the board, a lot of star players and fantasy players making plays for their teams. I've got at least 3 guys from this game going, so I'm pretty stoked to watch it. And, anytime you can get kind of bitter divisional rivals on the field together, it's great television. I'm excited to watch these teams beat the snot out of each other. I'm excited to see all my fantasy players that I got going that night lighting up the scoreboard, or knowing my luck, they'll all get shut down. And the one player that my opponent owns from this entire game, Tyler Kroft, he'll get 30 points and I'll lose, and it'll be depressing and terrible, and it'll be just like every other week in fantasy this year. It's been rough. I don't understand how I can be among the top point scorers in my league and yet still be under 500. It's ridiculous, but that's my life this year. I don't know why, but the fantasy gods have decided to not bless me. But anyway, so these are all my picks for all the Week 13 action. Hopefully I do as well this week as I did last week, where I went 14-2. Honestly, I'll be happy with anything over 12. So if I can hit at least 12 or 13 wins this week out of all these kind of close games, I'll be pretty happy with that. Now, if you disagree with any of these picks, and looking at my comment sections every week, I'd be surprised if anybody ever agrees with anything I say. But if you disagree with these picks and kind of want to put your money where your mouth is, this channel is still sponsored by our friends over at BetDSI. And right now, all Film Room viewers will get a free $25 wager credit with promo code FILM25. You punch that in, you get a free $25 to play with, and anything that you win, any cash you win, you get to keep. It doesn't matter what you use it for. It doesn't matter what you spend it on. That money that you win is yours. So, if you want to get a little bit of extra free cash for this holiday season, go to betdsi.com, use promo code FILM25, get some free wager credits, and see how much you can win. Now, as for me, I will be doing another full Film Room episode next week. I'm leaning towards doing it on Jimmy Garoppolo's first start. That's why I'm watching that game intently, but I'm always open to suggestions, so kind of drop those in the comments below, and maybe I'll get inspired by one of your requests and change my topic. But as of now, I'm planning on Jimmy G. We'll see where it goes, if he totally flames out or if it's just not a very good game to put on tape. And if I don't think it'll make an entertaining episode, I'll do something else. So keep those suggestions coming. Keep hitting me up on Twitter. Keep hitting me up in these comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys in a few days. Until then, later.